Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm your host David and I've been joined by Keith and John. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
You all right?
Yes, very, very well. Now, I'm really pleased to say that this game has gone ahead. It's taken about 3 months to get these guys together in a room to get their armies down to have a game. So a lot of the planning has gone involved to get you blokes here.
Yep.
So thank you so much for your efforts. Unbelievably, these guys haven't travelled too far. You know, the last couple of guys I've had were from Southampton, a couple of guys from Devon recently. Keith, where have you come from this morning?
I'm from Essex.
Excellent. So a couple of hours?
About an hour and a half.
Oh, nice, John.
Yeah, I'm from North East Lincolnshire, so about 2 hours.
Brilliant. So that's great news. So they are fresh and ready to go, I hope.
Absolutely.
Fed and watered?
Yeah.
Excellent. So we've got a bit of an interesting game today. We've got really elite Iron Warriors.
Yeah, absolutely. Terminators and Dreadnoughts. That's the focus of this list.
Yeah.
Walking tanks, basically.
Yeah, I was about to say heavy walking armour almost, eh? And then Keith, what we got? I'm not sure.
So it's based on a little snippet of Book 7, where it's all based on heavy support and artillery.
Great.
So
I think we have to address the elephant in the room here. We do have a Typhon in today's game. Oh, God. I think it's going to be quite interesting. In particular, as the board I've built is a very heavy city fight board, and that Typhon has got to work really hard to get around the city to acquire its targets.
yeah.
Now, we had this discussion this morning. I think the Typhon can be quite devastating, but you've not had a lot of luck with it.
No, I'm not the best with scatter rolls. So the las cannons seem to be more deadly than the big gun at the moment. So
That's what happens when you take one of Peter Turbo's toys, though.
This is true.
yeah. And I am a spaceball player at heart, so I do like to ram it forward. So
Okay.
yeah.
We'll see. For a man that doesn't like scattering, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4 units to scatter.
Yeah.
I admire that.
Yeah. I like to be different and like to be challenging and big guns. None of my armies that I've had has had big guns.
Okay.
So I thought, why not?
Give it a whirl.
Yeah.
Big guns never tire, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's going to be really interesting to see the Space Wolves get to grips with the city. But also as well, if you look at the amount of units and firepower compared to the Iron Warriors, I mean, you've got a bit of firepower.
Yep.
But I don't think that's where your power lies, is it? It's combat, surely. It has to be.
Yeah, mostly combat. There's surprising amounts of firepower, and the Doridio, it's good firepower. It's high quality firepower in small amounts. The ground flux bombard on the Leviathan is also nasty, depending on what I shoot it at.
Yep.
Kiri's, siege tyrants. So there's shooting in there.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to do a lot of damage in close combat, but it's kind of a mixed force, really. It does well at range. It does well in combat.
I think the Space Wolves had the advantage they've got is the ability to fire indirectly.
Yeah.
I think that'd be really key for this mission because I've purposely put a lot of line of sight blocking terrain in on the board. But also as well, I think you've got weight of numbers in your dice, haven't you?
Yes. That's basically what I'm relying on. I haven't got that much AP2. If you kind of look, I mean, the quad mortars are what, AP4?
Yeah.
And then I've got the Whirlwind Scorpius, which is AP3. So if you get hold of these two, I haven't really got much AP2 to go through the Terminator armour, so it's going to be just throwing dice in.
I think in this game in particular, without trying to give too much away, I think target priority for both of these armies is going to be absolutely key. You know, John will be wanting to get rid of the Typhon and probably the Medusa because, as Keith mentioned, that's where the AP2 in the army is, and that will devastate the Terminators. Equally, you know, you need to get rid of perhaps the Dorado with the las cannons. I think that's probably the biggest threat for you, really. And maybe whittle down a couple of Terminators from each unit, and after that, you've just then got them in combat.
Yeah, that's the whole plan, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. Let's have a quick look at the mission. We have gone for, and I've forgotten it straight away, we've gone for Onslaught with Vanguard Strike. So really love the kind of triangular deployment. Looks a bit more dynamic on the city board, I think, rather than sort of just a flat line each side. And you know, that objective is going to be placed in the 6 inches away from the deployment zone, and it's worth 5 points to each of you.
Yeah.
You've both got no transport, so it's going to be a foot slog, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm hoping that I can rely on me being a little bit faster again across the board.
Yeah, definitely.
The Terminators, but
yeah, because you can run, shoot, and charge, or run, shoot, and
you can run and charge, or shoot and charge.
That's it. Yeah. So you got your 6-inch move, you got your run, and then if you get a charge, you've got potential of quite a long movement.
Potentially you can go 18 inches,
24. Yeah.
That's very unlikely, but the potential's there to get across the board quite quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for me, most of it's just going to trundle very slowly across the battlefield. I was lucky enough to get Voidwalker on my Warlord trait.
Yes, so that's right, yeah.
I can have one unit deep strike in, but the rest of it will just be very, very slowly trundling across the board. It's a Contemptor Mortis, so it's not even fleet. So I'm just going to be like the England forwards from the rugby team. Slowly trundling to victory, hopefully.
A relentless march.
Exactly, relentless march of the Iron Warriors.
Love it, to use the vernacular. Excellent. Good. I think it's going to be a really interesting game. I can't decide where this is going to go. I think it'll be all about deployment, and perhaps in the first couple of turns where these gents make their initial move across the board, and I think that'll really heavily dictate where the army's going to go and who's going to win the game. So quite excited for this. You've both put a lot of love and care into your armies, and it shows. So great work on both sides. Mm-hmm. We haven't had Space Wars on for a very long time, actually, so really great to have Space Wars back.
Yeah.
I say that. We've had Derek on recently with his Battle for Sector 139, but they're sort of very small zone mortality games, so it's great to have larger point games with Space Wolves. Mm-hmm. Iron Warriors, we see them quite a lot. They are a really, really popular army.
They are, yeah. I've tried to go away from the standard Iron Warriors artillery-based lists with Medusas, Quad Mortars, etc., and I've tried to go for a force that I can picture leading the charge into a breach, which is what Iron Warriors do. It's the Imperial Fist, who are the Siege Masters of Defence, and these guys are the Siege Masters of Attack. So I thought, try and charge into the breach with Terminators, Dreadnoughts. I thought would be
absolutely
quite fluffy for them.
And it's really interesting with the Iron Warriors. James and I filmed a showcase for the Iron Warriors recently. So if you haven't seen that, go back and watch it. And we look at James's, I think it's 12 or 13,000 points of Iron Warriors, and we talk about the different builds available. And James does quite an alternative list. We talk about the popularity of Iron Warriors as well. So go back and check that video out. It might be worth watching if you're a keen Iron Warriors fan. I do agree with you, though. I do love certain armies lend themselves to certain lists and builds, which is absolutely fine because it's true to the fluff and the storage, which is great to follow. But I do love an alternative list that, like a fast-moving Death Guard army, or lots of troops in something like in a White Scars army. You just see jet bikes, troops. So I love the alternative builds and the rights of war that allow you to do all those different wild lists. So I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, should be.
I'm a bit worried for you first turn if you lose a few Terminators, but I've got confidence in the Dreadnoughts to perhaps support the line.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, the Dreadnoughts are going to be key in this, I think.
Good stuff. And it'll be good to see the Wolves just flooding through the city.
Yeah, it's going to be all about the charge. So
absolutely. All right, let's get on with it. Again, we're really looking forward to this game. Let's see what happens, and we'll see you at the beginning of turn 1.
2,500 points of Iron Warriors. It is led by a Praetor, and the right of war is Pride of the Legion. The Warlord trait is Voidwalker. Leading the charge across the battlefield for the Iron Warriors will be a Praetor Tribune, Menetius the Crater Walker. He's equipped with Tartaros Terminator armor, an Iron Halo, digital lasers, and a mastercrafted Paragon Blade. Alongside him in the HQ slot is a Legion Consul, Iapetus. He is a Primus Medicae. He's equipped with Cataphractii Terminator armor, a Narthesium, a Needle Pistol, a Combi Bolter, and a Power Axe. The first elite's choice for the Iron Warriors is a Legion Dreadnought Talon, consisting of 2 Dreadnoughts, Homodos and Hybris. They both have twin-link las cannons, twin-link missile launchers, and armoured Ceramite. Providing suppressing fire in the second elite slot is the Legion Contemptor Mortis Dreadnought, Orion. He is equipped with 2 Kiri's Pattern Assault Cannons and a Havoc Launcher. Trudging across no man's land in the troops' choices will be Legion Terminator Squad, the Fonoi. This is 5 Cataphractii Terminators. The Sergeant is equipped with a Power Axe and Combi Bolter. The remaining models are equipped with Power Mauls, and there is 1 Reaper Autocannon in the squad. Second troops' choice is Legion Terminator Squad, the Array. This is 5 Tartaros Terminators. The Sergeant has a grenade harness. All 5 models have paired lightning claws. Final troops' choice for the Iron Warriors is Legion Terminator Squad, the Algia. This is 5 Terminators equipped with Tartaros Terminator armor. The Sergeant has a grenade harness, combi bolter. All models have chain fists, and there is 1 heavy flamer in the squad. Raining down fire from the heavy support slot will be Tyrant Siege Terminator squad, the Gigantes. This is led by a Tyrant Siege Master with Omniscope combi bolter. Every other model has combi bolter and power fists. In the heavy support slot on anti-tank hunting duties will be Deridio Pattern Dreadnought Helios. He is equipped with an Arachnus Pattern heavy lascannon battery, an Atamantic Purveyes, and armoured Ceramite. The final heavy support choice for the Iron Warriors is Leviathan Siege Dreadnought Talon, featuring Leviathan Siege Dreadnought Ophion. He is equipped with a Grav Flux Bombard, a Siege Drill with inbuilt melter gun, a Phosphex Discharger, and armoured Ceramite.
2,500 points of Space Wolves, led by Siegebreaker, with the Shield of the Wolf King Warlord trait, running no Rite of War. The army is led by Siegebreaker, who's armed with a combi melter and a thunder hammer, and he's armoured with Cataphractii Terminator armour. Second up is a Centurion with Artificer armour, Refractor Field, Frostblade, and Thunder Hammer. The third choice is the Speaker of the Dead, armed with Aether Rune armour, Refractor Field, Melter Bombs, and a Great Frostblade. First of 2 elite choices is 2 Apothecaries. One is armed with Artificer armour, and one is armed with an Augury Scanner. They will be going in the Grace Slayer units. The second elite choice are 3 quad launcher rapiers with shatter shells. First of 3 troop choices is a 15-man Grey Slayer pack, armed with 4 combat shields, 4 power axes, 3 power fists, 3 with bolt pistol chainswords, and the Huskell is armed with Artificer armour, combat shield, Nuncio Vox, and a power fist. Second troop choice is another 15-man Grey Slayer pack. These are armed with 5 combat shields, 3 power axes, 1 power fist, 2 combi plasma, a Nuncio Vox, and 3 with bolt guns. The Huskell is armed with Artificer armour, combat shield, and a frost axe. And the third and last troops choice is a 10-man Breacher squad, all armed with melter bombs, 2 flamers, and the Sergeant has Artificer armour, combi flamer, and a thunder hammer. Heavy support for the Space Wolves is a 6-man heavy support unit. 5 are armed with missile launchers. The Sergeant has Augury Scanner, Nuncio Box, bolt pistol, and chainsword. Second heavy support is a Whirlwind Scorpius, armed with Scorpius missile launcher and a combi bolter. Third and final heavy support choice is a Medusa artillery tank, armed with a Medusa siege gun and a hull-mounted heavy bolter. Lord of War's choice is a Typhon heavy siege tank with lascannon sponsored and armoured Ceramite.
Keith, John, you're deployed in the city. Keith, you've got a ton of troops on that board.
Yes, I've nearly run out of space in the deployment zone.
It was a tricky one, wasn't it? Because we had to deploy alternately.
Yeah.
So there was a couple of, you deployed certain units down, you kind of did it alternately, which is quite interesting. John, you've got your army, it's focused. There's not a lot on the board, is there?
Yeah, it's because it's a Terminator and Dreadnought army. Obviously, it's going to be quite small. And thanks to the Voidwalker Warlord trait, I've also got a unit of Tartaros Terminators with Chain Fists in Deep Strike, waiting to come and munch the Typhon Siege Tank.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers
Very
crossed.
scary.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Now, who won the roll off to go first? I think John.
I won the roll off. I chose to force Keith to go first, so I get to weather a turn of horrendous firepower. But hopefully, I've got the resilience to do so.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. All right, so no seize in this case, is that right?
No, I'm not going to seize.
All right, good stuff. All right, well, good luck, gents. Friendly handshake if we can.
May the best Iron Warrior win.
Yep, Spaceballs for turn 1. Spaceballs turn 1 movement. Greyslayer unit moves forwards, trying to get to them Tartaros Terminators in front of them. The heavy weapons and the quad launchers stayed where they were. Breachers move forward, getting ready for them to take a Iron Warriors charge later on. Typhons move to make a better target. And the last Greyslayer squad has just shuffled round, waiting for the Iron Warriors to come towards them. Everything else kind of stayed still. Spaceballs turn 1 shooting phase. The Greyslayers run forward 5 inches, and the Breachers run forward an almighty 2 inches. Typhon opens up Spaceballs turn 1 shooting. The only weapon that can gain a target is the right hand side las cannon, aiming at the Leviathan. Managed to hit, but couldn't penetrate. The Whirlwind Scorpius opens up with 3 shots, aiming for the Deredeo. Unfortunately, unable to see through either the Scorpius or the Nuncio boxes, scatters and misses everything. Next up are the quad launchers, aiming for the Tartaros Terminators with their shatter shells. 12 shots, hitting 9 times, causing 7 wounds, failed to kill any. Missile launchers take aim at the Tartaros Terminators also. 5 shots, 3 wounds, killing 1. Last to shoot is the Medusa, aiming for the Tartaros Terminator with the Praetor in. Using the Nuncio box from the missile launchers, I managed to hit 3 models, killing 2. End of Spaceballs turn 1. Not exactly what I wanted to happen, but I'm happy with taking a few Terminators. Just wish I could have done more.
Iron Warriors, turn 1, movement phase. The Leviathan, Doridio and Siege Tyrants all rolled well for their move through cover and have moved up through the building towards the Typhon and Breachers. In the centre of the board, the Tartaros Terminators with Lightning Claws and the Praetor, having avoided any type of morale test through to the Rack and Ruin Special Warriors of the Iron Warriors, have moved up towards the Greyslayers. The Contemptor Mortis Dreadnought has trundled round from the corner of the building to get a line of sight onto the Greyslayers. The Cataphracti Terminators with maces have moved down the alleyway towards the Greyslayers. And finally, the Dreadnought Talon has moved out of cover to draw a bead on the Typhon Siege Tank. Iron Warriors, turn 1, shooting phase. The Contemptor Mortis opens fire on the Greyslayer squad, unleashing a hail of lead from its Kiri's Pattern assault cannons and firing a barrage of missiles from its Havoc launcher. It managed to kill 4 of the Greyslayers, forcing a leadership check, which the Greyslayers duly failed and have fled 7 inches towards the board edge. Final act of the Iron Warriors shooting phase, the 2 Dreadnoughts open fire on the Typhon Siege Tank. Both las cannons, both missile launchers hit. One of the las cannons, one of the missile launchers glanced the Typhon Siege Tank. However, intervening models or the dust cloud from the fleeing Greyslayers meant that one was saved by cover save, meaning 1 glancing hit and 1 hull point on the Typhon Siege Tank. End of the first turn for the Iron Warriors. I'm pretty happy with the results of that. Managing to get some Greyslayers fleeing was a fantastic result. A hull point on the Typhon was another good result. Hopefully next turn I will be able to get more line of sight and do some more damage.
Spaceballs turn 2, movement. The fleeing Greyslayers managed to rally and pushing forward to iron up the Terminators for later. The missile launchers and the quad launchers stayed where they are, iron up the Terminators for later. The Typhon moved forward, eyeing up the dreadnoughts down the road. The breaches have moved forward, looking at the Leviathan coming through the building. And the last Greyslayer squad just shuffled round, waiting for the late fight. Space Wolves turn to shooting. The Scorpius targeted the Leviathan, scattered off target, missing everything. Then I opened up with the Medusa, aiming at the same Leviathan. Managed to hit this time, causing a penetrating hit on the Leviathan, which was saved, and taking out one of the Tyrant Siege Terminators. Next to shoot are the quad launchers, using their Shatter Strike rounds at the Tartarus Terminators. 12 shots, 9 hits, 8 wounds, causing 1 failed save. Next to fire are the quad launchers, using their Shatter Shell rounds at the Tartarus Terminators. It's 12 shots, hitting 9 times, causing 8 wounds, killing the Terminator. Next up, the Space Wolves fire their heavy missiles at the Mortis Contemptor. 5 shots, only hitting 3 times. 2 of them managed to cause damage, 1 penetrating, 1 glancing. The pen gets through, just shaking the mortars though. The Space Wolves missile launchers fire into the Mortis Contemptor 5 times, hitting 3 times, causing a penetrating hit and a glancing hit, shaking the thing. Next fire is the Typhon at the front dreadnought. The main gun is out of range, so the las cannons are the only things that are in range of the dreadnought. Both are missed though. Breachers run forward, trying to put a speed bump in front of the Leviathan, trying to stop them getting to the Typhon before it can do any damage. Overall, the turn wasn't that great for the Wolves, just blinking a couple of hull points, so not exciting.
Iron Warriors turn to movement phase. With a crack of displacing air, the Tartaros Terminators with chain fists arrive from deep strike, scattering a minimal distance and arriving in a good position to give them a shot at the Greyslayers, who have recently rallied. The Terminators in Cataphractii armour have moved up the alley and are moving out onto the high street. The Dreadnought Talon has advanced slightly behind them. The Contemptor Dreadnought with the Kiri's autocannons has moved up to try and get more targets in range of its snap-shooting Kiri's auto assault cannons. The Praetor and the sole remaining Tartaros Terminator, again spared morale by the Rack and Ruin rule, have moved up to try and get away from the blistering fire coming from the Space Wolves gun emplacement. The Doridio Dreadnought and Siege Tyrants have moved up, and the Leviathan has again moved up towards the breaches, ready to give them a taste of grav and heavy flamers. Iron Warriors turn to shooting phase. Opening up with the Leviathan, it unleashes its heavy flamers, Meltagun and Ground Flux Bombard on the breaches. Unfortunately, the heavy flamers cause no damage whatsoever. The Meltagun and Ground Flux Bombard, however, manage to crush and melt 3 of the breaches. Next to fire are the Tyrant Siege Terminators. Opening up with combi bolters and crack missiles from the Cyclone missile launchers, they manage to kill 5 of the breaches. Unable to draw a bead on anything to shoot at other than breaches, the Doridio decides to run forward so that it can later on flank round the building to get a line of sight on the Typhon siege tank. Opening fire with its Kiri's autocannons, snap firing at the Greyslayers, the Contemptor Mortis gets 1 hit, which causes a wound, is ultimately saved by the feel no pain of the Greyslayers. The Iron Warriors Cataphractii open up on the Space Wolves Greyslayers with a hail of fire from combi bolters and a Reaper autocannon. Unfortunately, despite causing 2 wounds, the Space Wolves saved all of the attacks from the Cataphractii. Next up, the Tartaros, having recently arrived from deep strike, opened up with rapid firing combi bolters and a heavy flamer, causing 1 wound with a heavy flamer, and 2 wounds from the combi bolters, killing 1 Space Wolf outright. Again, to finish the Iron Warriors shooting phase, the 2 Dreadnoughts open fire on the Typhon siege tank. All las cannon and missile launcher shots hit. Only 1 causes a scratch on the armour, 1 las cannon causing a glancing hit, and 1 hull point on the Typhon. Iron Warriors end of turn 2, a fairly satisfying round, another bit of damage on the Typhon. Sadly, didn't do as much damage to the breaches as I had hoped for. Now I just have to weather the fire of Space Wolves turn 3.
Space Wolves turn 3 movement. The Grey Slayers have kind of moved forward, try and position themselves because we're not too sure what Terminator unit we're going to go for. The missile launchers and the quads are still standing there, still holding the line. The Typhon hasn't moved either. Got a nice speed down there for the Dreadnoughts. The other Grey Slayer unit has pushed forward, trying to get forward into the Deredeo and the Tyrant Siege Terminators. And the Breachers have pushed forward. Potential charge on the Leviathan there. Space Wolves turn 3 shooting. The heavy missile launchers aim for the Tartarus Terminators on the building there. Went for frag missiles. Try and get as many shots on there as possible. Hitting 18 times, causing 9 wounds. All of them saved. The Space Wolves quad launchers fire their shat shells into the Mortis Contemptor, hitting 9 times, causing 4 penetrating hits, 1 glance, taking him out. The Space Wolf Medusa takes a shot at the Deredeo, hitting that, the Leviathan and one of the Terminators, killing the Terminator outright and causing a penetrating hit on the Leviathan and the Deredeo, only shaking them though. The Whirlwind Scorpius opens up at the Leviathan with 4 shots, causing 1 glance, hitting the Terminator but causing no damage to him. The final act of the Space Wolves, the Typhon opens up into the Dreadnought, causing a stunned result and a hull point, also managing to clip 1 Terminator and taking him out. The Grey Slayer unit have run forward 3 inches towards the Cataphractii Terminators to try and get a charge off the next phase. Space Wolves turn 3 assault phase. The Grey Slayers try to charge the Cataphractii Terminators, needing a 7-inch, but rolled a 5, but -1 because of the Warrior's Metal Rule, failing the charge. The Space Wolf Breachers declare a charge against the Leviathan. Despite being slowed down by their void-hardened armour, they managed to get in there comfortably, with the Overwatch from the Leviathan being ineffective, preparing to clamp their melter bombs on the Leviathan.
Combat between the Leviathan and the Breachers kicks off with the Leviathan, swinging 3 times with his siege drill, fluffs 2 of the attacks, and then fails to wound with his final attack that hit.
Space Wolf Breachers clamp 6 melter bombs on the Leviathan at initiative 1, causing 4 hull points, destroying it outright, killing a Siege Tyrant Terminator and 2 Breachers in the explosion. Space Wolves turn 3, end of it. Overall, quite pleased with it. A little bit disappointed that I failed to charge though, but getting rid of that Leviathan is brilliant.
Iron Warriors turn 3 movement. The Tartaros Terminators have moved through cover to get a flanking position on the Grey Hunters. The Cataphractii have moved up, again ready to get a charge off on the Grey Hunters. The stunned Dreadnought has remained where it is. The unstunned Dreadnought has moved up even further. And over on the other side of the battlefield, the remaining Lightning Claw Tartaros and the Praetor have moved up towards the Breachers. The Siege Tyrants and Apothecary have moved up to the Breachers, and the Deredio has moved forward in the hope that the Breachers will get shot off the table so it can run up further to get a shot on the Typhon next turn. Iron Warriors shooting turn 3. The Siege Tyrants open up on the Breachers with a barrage of crack missiles and combi bolter fire. They cause 3 wounds with the crack missiles, 1 wound with a combi bolter, all of which is saved. The Deredio opens fire with its hull-mounted heavy bolter and its 2 Arachnus las cannons. The heavy bolter does absolutely nothing at all. The las cannons took out 1 Breacher. The Cataphractii open fire on the Grey Hunters with their combi bolters and Reaper autocannon. Killing 1 with combi bolters, the Reaper autocannon is stopped by Feel No Pain. The Tartaros open fire on the Grey Hunters from behind. The Flamer kills 1, and another 1 is killed by combi bolters from the remaining Tartaros. The final act of the Iron Warriors shooting phase, the 2 Dreadnoughts open fire at the Typhon. The stunned Dreadnought, snap firing, misses all of its shots. The Dreadnought, which is firing normally, hits, but causes no damage at all. Iron Warriors turn 3 assault phase. The Iron Warriors Cataphractii charge into the Space Wolves Grey Slayers, needing a 4-inch charge and getting a 4. Overwatch was ineffective. The Tartaros, then charging through difficult terrain into the Grey Slayers, need a 5-inch charge and get a 5. Very, very close, but they're in. The Iron Warriors Siege Tyrants charge the Breachers. Overwatch being ineffective, with a Combi Flamer, a bolt gun and a bolt pistol opening up, they make it in, only just getting the distance needed. This is an ongoing theme for my assault phase, as the Praetor and Lightning Claw Tartaros Terminator also charge the Breachers, needing an 8-inch charge including the cover, getting 8 inches. In the combat between the Tribune and the Breachers, the Praetor fights first at initiative step 5. Swinging his mastercrafted Paragon Blade, he hits 6 times, causing 2 regular wounds and 2 instant death wounds. The regular wounds deal with the Breacher Sergeant and the other Breacher. The instant death then kill the Speaker of the Dead. The Praetor consolidates with his Lightning Claw Tartaros 5 inches. The Medic consolidates 1 inch with the Siege Tyrants. In the combat between the Cataphractii and the Grey Slayers, the Cataphractii fumble their attacks, landing 2 hits out of 9 attacks, causing 1 wound, which then goes on to kill a Grey Slayer.
Also at Initiative 4, the Grey Slayers have 12 attacks with counter-attack, hitting in the Cataphractii armour, causing 5 wounds, killing 1 Cataphractii Terminator. Also at Initiative 4, the single Grey Slayer goes into the Tartarus Terminators, 3 attacks, causing no damage.
Attacking at Initiative Step 1, the Cataphractii Sergeant with Power Axe swings his weapon, cutting down 2 Grey Slayers. At Initiative Step 1, the Tartaros pile in with their chain fists, ripping and tearing into the Grey Slayers, killing 7, which is enough to wipe the unit out.
Before they die, the Grey Slayers swing in with an axe and a fist, not hitting anything at all.
After wiping out the Grey Slayers in close combat, the Tartaros Terminators consolidated 4 inches, moving into cover to try and avoid the Typhon. The Cataphractii, in their slower, bulkier armour, only consolidated 1 inch and have merely spaced out to reduce the damage with templates. At the end of turn 3, the Iron Warriors, despite having suffered horrendous losses, have managed to get onto the objective, whereas the Space Wolves are nowhere near their objective. I now need to survive for another 3 turns.
Space Wolves turn 4 movement. The Grey Slayers are pushing forward, trying to stop off them Terminators coming through. The Typhons move forward, unsure what target to go for, so I've left my options open. Space Wolves turn 4 shooting. The Medusa opens up into the Deredeo, scattering way off target and causing no damage. Then the Space Wolves open up with the Whirlwind Scorpius into the Tyrant Siege Terminators, hitting 6, causing 5 wounds, just blinks off their armour. Space Wolves missile launchers open up at the furthest Dreadnought, only managing to hit once out of 5 shots, but does manage to pen and immobilise the Dreadnought. The Space Wolves quad launchers open up at the Cataphractii that's right in front of them, doing their Shatter Shell rounds, 12 shots, 8 hit, 8 wound, taking 1 Terminator out. The Space Wolves Typhon open up, aiming 1 las cannon at the Dreadnought, and then the other las cannon and the Typhon Siege cannon at the Cataphractii Terminators in front of them. All that he managed to do is take out 1 Cataphractii Terminator. The last act of the Space Wolves shooting phase, I've run the Grey Slayers forward 4 inches, getting closer to the Praetor that's in the building. Put the Grey Slayers on the middle floor just to represent that they're on the ground so we can have a look at them. Turn 4 Space Wolves assault phase. The Grey Slayers has charged into the Praetor's unit. We've had to move on top floor just for ease, but everyone's in there with a 6-inch charge.
At Initiative Step 5, the Praetor hits with his Paragon Blade, hitting 5 times, causing 4 wounds, 1 of which was instant death, and killing 3 of the Grey Slayers. Striking at Initiative 4, the Iron Warriors Tartaros Terminator with Lightning Claws manages to get 2 hits, killing 1 Grey Slayer.
Also at Initiative 4, the Space Wolves attack back with 21 attacks, hitting 10 times, but only causing 2 wounds. Bounced off the Terminator armour. Space Wolves Initiative Step 1, Swinging with a Power Fist takes out the Tartarus Terminator. Then I have a Frost Axe and a Thunderhammer going into the Praetor, causing 2 wounds, which bounced off his Invan. Iron Warriors win combat. Space Wolves foul their leadership, but was able to get away from the Praetor, running 7 inches back to their own lines. The Praetor consolidates 1 inch further into the building. End of Space Wolves' turn. Not the greatest achievement. Really need to start pushing for the objective, but the Iron Warriors seem to be covering all angles.
Iron Warriors turn 4 movement phase. The Praetor moved over and joined the Siege Tyrants, who had moved up with the Primus Medicae to draw a bead on the fleeing Grey Slayers. The Deridio Dreadnought moved round and has drawn a bead on the Medusa through the gap in the silos. Over on the other side, the Cataphractii has moved up, looking at the Quad Mortars, and the Tartaros have gone to have a peek through the window at the Space Wolves Heavy Support Squad. Iron Warriors turn 4 shooting. Cataphractii Sergeant decides not to shoot at the Quad Mortars, as if he does kill someone, it will give him a longer charge in the charge phase. The Tartaros have no such qualms and open fire on the Space Wolves Missile Launcher Support Squad through the windows. The Heavy Flamer causes 4 hits and clips a Quad Mortar, but causes no damage. The Combi Bolters, however, manage to gun down 1 Missile Launcher toting Space Wolf. The Siege Tyrants and Primus Medicae open fire on the fleeing Grey Slayer squad. Crack missiles manage to kill 2, and the Combi Bolters bounce off Artificer armor. The Deridio opens fire on the Medusa siege tank with its las cannons and heavy bolters. It's hitting the side armor through the gap. All 3 heavy bolter rounds hit. One of the las cannon hit. The other punches a hole through the silo, killing nothing. The one las cannon that hit goes on to destroy the Medusa siege cannon, and the heavy bolters cause a glance. 2 hull points on the Medusa, and it's lost its main weapon. In the final act of the Iron Warrior shooting phase, the Dreadnoughts open fire on the Typhon. They manage to get 1 penetrating hit through with a las cannon, which, due to its super heavy status, simply causes a hull point. Iron Warriors turn 4 assault phase. The Tartaros Terminators successfully make it into combat with the Space Wolves Heavy Support Squad with missile launchers. Cataphractii Sergeant makes it into combat with the Rapier Quad Mortar Squadron. Overwatch proved totally ineffective.
Rapiers attack with 12 attacks at initiative 4, hitting 5, causing 3 wounds. None of them get through.
At initiative step 1, the Cataphractii Sergeant swings with his power axe. He hits once, killing 1 single Quad Mortar crewman. The Quad Mortar crewmen hold their courage and remain locked in combat.
The combat between the Tartarus Terminators and the Heavy Support Squad at initiative 4, hitting with 11 attacks, causing 3 hits, 2 wounds, which just bounced off their armour. Space Wolf Siegebreaker, swinging with 3 attacks with his Thunderhammer at initiative 1. 3 attacks, only hitting once, but they're going through, killing 1 Tartarus Terminator.
Also hitting at initiative step 1, 5 Tartaros Terminators with chain fists pile into the support squad, wiping out the Siegebreaker, destroying the heavy weapon squad, and consolidating 3 inches to try and escape from the wrath of the Typhon. At the end of the turn, I think that was a pretty good turn. Locking down those Quad Mortars, stunning the Medusa, another hull point on the Typhon. I'm quite happy with that.
Space Wolves, turn 5 movement. The Grey Slayers failed their morale and run back another 12 inches towards the table edge. The Medusa moved over so it can get aim at the Tyrant Siege Terminators. The Typhon pulled back to gain a bead at the Deridio and the Tyrant Siege Terminators. Everything else is either locked in combat or unable to move. Space Wolves open up their turn 5 shooting with the Typhon going into the Deridio and the Cataphractii squad. The main gun goes into the Deridio, which clips the Deridio and 3 of the Cataphracties, causing an immobile result on the Deridio and taking out 1 Cataphractii. The 2 las cannons hit, cause 2 wounds, which he ends up saving. Whirlwind Scorpius opens up onto the Deredeo with only 2 shots, scattering and managing to clip the Cataphractii Terminator, killing him and causing a glance and a pen on the Deredeo, which he saved with his in-bun save. The Space Wolves Medusa opens up with its heavy bolter into the Primus Medicae, causing 2 hits, 1 wound, which gets through his armour, but he saves with his Feel No Pain. Space Wolves turn 5 assault phase. Rapiers going into the Cataphractii Sergeant with 5 attacks, hitting 3 times, causing 1 wound, which bounced off his armour.
At initiative step 1, Cataphractii Sergeant wades in with his 2 attacks with his power axe. He hits twice, but both times gets tangled on the rock quad mortars and fails to wound. Drawn combat. End of
Space Wolves turn 5. Little bit of a mixed bag. I'm quite happy that I'm starting to whittle them Terminators down. Other than that, fairly okay.
Iron Warriors, turn 5, movement phase. The immobilised Box Dread, strangely enough, is going nowhere. The Box Dread with mobility has moved up towards the Typhon. The Tartaros Terminators have formed a conga line from the objective to get line of sight onto the fleeing Grey Slayers. The Primus Medicae and Praetor have decided that Courage and Valour are not really for them, so they're trying to move away from that Typhon, and the Deridio still immobilised. Iron Warriors, turn 5, shooting. The Tartaros Terminators draw a bead on the Grey Slayers. 3 combi bolters are able to shoot, 2 in rapid fire range, however no damage is done to the Grey Slayers. The Dreadnought Talon opens fire on the Typhon, unable to penetrate its armour with either las cannons or missile launchers. Continuing the Iron Warrior shooting phase, the Deridio opens up on the Typhon, hitting twice with its las cannons, failing to penetrate. Iron Warriors turn 5, assault phase. The quad mortar crew swing at the Cataphractii Sergeant. They hit 3 times, they wound once, but his armour fends off the blows. Attacking back with 2 attacks, he manages to kill 1 quad mortar crewman. The quad mortar crew then decide to flee, leaving their artillery pieces unmanned as they flee 10 inches off the table. The Cataphractii Sergeant consolidates 5 inches. Iron Warriors turn 5 summary. The Iron Warriors have managed to break the Space Wolves lines. That was a very successful turn in some ways for me, wiping out those quad mortars, the Space Wolves failing to rally. However, shooting with a Deridio, slightly disappointing. I get the feeling I'm now going to give up a Deridio, a Primus Medicae and a Praetor to a Typhon in the next turn.
Space Wolves turn 6, final turn of the game for them. The Grey Slayers didn't rally and end up running off the board. All what's left me with is a couple of tanks to manoeuvre. The Medusa moved back to gain a target at the Tartaros Terminators. The Typhon has moved further up just so I can take pot shots at both lots of Terminators. Whirlwind Scorpius has stayed where it is. Space Wolves turn 6 shooting. Medusa opens up at the Tartaros Terminators, try and get rid of them from their objective. Heavy bolter fires, gets 3 shots, 3 hits, taking 1 Terminator out. The Typhon targets with both las cannons into the Cataphractii Terminator, causing 2 hits and 2 wounds, bouncing off the Cataphractii's in-run. The Typhon fires its main gun into the Tartaros Terminators, trying to get them off that objective. It scatters within ½ inch of going off the board, killing 2 Tartaros Terminators. Not quite enough from them. In a final attempt, the Whirlwind Scorpius fires 3 shots into the Tartaros Terminator that's on the objective. Last ditch attempt, ending up scattering and missed completely. End of Space Wolves turn 6. Tried so hard to wipe out that last Tartaros Terminator. Now it's just bracing ourselves for the final siege from the Iron Warriors.
Iron Warriors, turn 6, movement phase. The Praetor moves out with the Primus Medicae, coming out onto the street to hunt down any surviving members of the Space Wolves. The Dreadnoughts do not move. However, the Tartaros Terminator and Cataphractii Terminator have both moved to make it harder for any enemy vehicles to get line of sight and to make sure that objective is definitely theirs. Iron Warriors turn 6 shooting phase. The Doridio opens up at the section of Medusa it can see between the silos. The las cannons hit, automatically penetrating, but the cover saves are made. The heavy bolters hit but fail to penetrate. The Medusa remains alive for the end of the game. For the final shot of the game, the 2 dreadnoughts open fire at the Typhon. One las cannon manages to glance the Typhon, causing another hull point, leaving it on 2 hull points left. No other shooting to happen, and now we're going to finish the game and calculate victory points.
Well, that was the end of the game. Iron Warriors versus Space Wolves. I mean, that was a bit of a roller coaster, weren't it, gents?
Oh, emotional up and down the whole time.
Yeah, that was a slugfest all the way from start to finish. Started slow, built to a crescendo, and then kind of died off to a whimper at the end. But that was interesting game.
Yeah.
I think it was a lesson in how not to roll for a leadership test. Stop your units from running off the back of the board.
Yeah.
Keith, we'll do the victory points in a minute, but we'll start with Keith first. I think you had a very unlucky game because your army had the potential to annihilate the Iron Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, everyone looks at my army and on paper, on the table, it looks scary as hell. Up until they start actually playing me, and then everything seems to...
I have to admit, I was terrified of that list all the way up until about the end of turn 4, at which point I was like, okay, this is starting to go my way a little bit now. But when I first saw the list, I was like, I'm happy to play against that. I think I'll probably lose by turn 3, but yeah, that was a really fun game.
It was a bit wild.
Yeah.
We'll dig into the victory points very quickly. The Space Wolves unfortunately did not manage to capture their objective in the Iron Warriors deployment zone.
No.
There was no attrition because that was won by the Iron Warriors. You didn't kill a unit in your first turn.
No. And
there was no Warlord, unfortunately. So unfortunately, the Space Wolves scored a big fat 0.
Yes.
Yeah.
But an A for effort. But the Iron Warriors did fantastically well. You got your victory point.
Yep.
You got attrition and you got Warlord, which took you to 7.
7 victory points, yeah. So, none of which I earned, by the way. They were all gifted to me by the amazingly bad leadership rolls of Keith and by my incredibly jammy invuln saves. So
yeah, you did have a couple of really key invulns when you needed it most, didn't you?
Yeah, that Doridio with the Automatic Purveyance it's as resilient as a Leviathan. And it makes everything else around it mini Leviathans. So linchpin of my list, that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. There's no model for that. Is it an Automatic Purveyance?
Automatic Purveyance. They previewed one about 2 years ago, and then being Forge World sadly didn't release it, and I think it's not going to come out. But
bit of a bone of contention, the old Purveyance, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, absolutely. Yeah.
But it worked really well. It boosts the +1 invulnerable for the units around it, so those Siege Tyrants get a 3-up invuln.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just such a tanky list with that Automatic Purveyance in it, yeah.
Because initially when I saw it, I thought, all you're doing is creating a perfect target for a Typhon.
Yeah.
But there's obviously a plan there. Well, I mean, combined with your great rolls and your unbelievably terrible scatter rolls.
Yeah, the whole game is, I don't know what it was. It was just every roll just seemed to not work in my favour.
I think deployment, the game was possibly one of deployment. I know my Doridio spent about 3 turns just kind of bumbling around with the Siege Tyrants before they got a line of sight onto anything. But it meant the Typhon crucially couldn't target them as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think for me, though, the Typhon was really confused about its role in this game. It kind of motored forward and backward along the road. It took a few shots, but it just didn't. It just couldn't connect, could it?
Yeah, I mean, it was the whole game. It was just I didn't know what to do with it. My dice rolls seemed to be really bad, scattering off. So it was like, should I go for this small confined clump of Terminators and one scatter, which I've been doing the whole game?
Yeah.
Means I don't hit anything, or the couple of Dreadnoughts which were kind of close together that if I scattered it might go on to the other one.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah, it was funny because you kind of expect the Typhon to be taken out really early on, but because it didn't particularly do very well, I think that allowed you to kind of push in different areas.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of fluff shots from a Doridio. Otherwise, it probably would have been going to turn 5. But I didn't have much in my list capable of dealing with it, so it was good, really, that it kind of scooted back and forth, accomplishing very little, and the scatters saved me, I think, a lot there, because that could have basically wiped out a unit a turn. So,
yeah. And that's an issue what I was worried about when I saw both the lists. But anyway, it didn't happen. The gents have brought back a unit each. So let's talk to Keith and the unit you've brought back.
So I brought back my quad launchers. It was the best of a bad bunch. They've probably done the most damage. And the fact is that they survived, 2.5 turns? Turn and a half in close combat with a Terminator. It's solid for a quad launcher unit. Yeah. So
they put out a lot of shots as well, didn't they?
They put out a lot of shots. They did do a fair amount of damage for what they are. I would say they probably got their points back, which is always good for a unit.
Yeah, I think they took out the Contemptor Mortis. Yeah. I think they really reduced the Lightning Claw Tartaros Terminators down to the point of basically zero effectiveness. And they held up an angry Cataphractii Sergeant with a power axe. So they did well. Yeah,
they did all right. And John, you brought back the Tartarus.
Yeah, they got the objective. They held the objective. They minced the unit of Grey Slayers. They minced the heavy support unit. They got my Slay the Warlord. I was tempted to bring back the Doridio just for the resilience it lent and the sheer amount of invuln saves it passed against Scorpiuses, Typhons, Medusas, all sorts of stuff. But I think in the end, these guys won me the game. So
yeah, I totally agree. Them deep striking deep into the field rather than running out was a brilliant move.
Yeah.
And as you say, they did score you 5 points in the game, so that was really, really good.
Well, 6 points including Slay the Warlord.
Oh, well, yes, of course, yeah, absolutely. So a good unit to bring back. They performed really, really well.
Yeah.
Tricky game. Not much else to say. It was really thrilling to watch. I honestly thought the Wolves had it quite early on, but yeah, just a little bit of luck. They didn't quite manage it.
No.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It was impossible to tell who was going to win up until the end of Space Wolves turn 6. So, a really good game. Very enjoyable, and I hope you guys have enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hope so. Now, there's a few mentions to talk about. Keith, we need to talk to you first. You are part of a podcast.
I am. It's a new podcast out. We've only done 5 episodes so far. It's a group of 4 of us. Literally, the way that we try and do it is like... if you was ever at like a games workshop or a gaming club and you're sitting around painting your models and just talking random stuff.
Okay.
That's how we try and do it. We try and do it very laid back. But all 4 of us have different aspects of the hobby that we like the most.
What's the name of the podcast?
The podcast is called The Mournival Podcast.
And where can we find that?
Generally, best place is either SoundCloud or iTunes.
Great stuff. So if you're keen, go to those mediums and download and have a good listen. What are the names of your co-hosts?
There is Adam, Lyle, Mike, and then myself.
What sort of armies have you got between the 4 of you, excuse me?
So there is Ad, which he is renowned to be the butterfly. So every episode he will generally be starting a new army. I think at the moment he's looking at World Eaters.
Okay.
Then there's Lyle, which does Word Bearers and Mechanicum,
nice,
and Militia. Then there's Mike, who does Sons of Horus, and myself that does Wolves and Sons of Horus.
Fantastic. So it's plenty for people to get stuck into.
Yeah, a nice mixture of mainly loyalists, mainly traitors at the moment, but we all kind of flutter in and out.
That's all right. It can always change, eh?
Yeah.
Good stuff. So please give those guys a listen. I'm sure they can interact with you via there's a Facebook page, I imagine.
We've got a Facebook page, Facebook group, and probably the best way is Instagram. I'm quite active on the Instagram page. So
good. And that segues us beautifully into that Instagram bit. I've taken a ton of photos from this game, so please go to the Facebook page when this game has been released. Have a look at those photos. As always, the best way to interact with these 2 gents, if you've got any questions for them, is directly via the medium of social media. Where can we find you?
You can find me at the Mournival Podcast.
Fantastic. John?
And you can find me on Instagram at Big Sailor Tiny Soldiers.
I love that. It's fantastic. I really, really hope you've enjoyed that game. I have no doubt we will try and tempt Keith and John back either for another game against each other or separately, but hopefully we can tempt you back for another game.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I know you're working on Night Lords, aren't you?
I'm working on a Night Lords list. I've also got an Imperium Secunda Shattered Legions list. Ooh. I've got some Mechanicum.
Great.
So I'm a bit of a heresy butterfly.
Great stuff. We always struggle for Night Lords, so Night Lords are very much welcome on the channel. We desperately need to get a few more games to get them represented. Iron Warriors and Alpha Legion, we have got tons. So any of the legions would be great. Space Wolves as well. We struggle for Space Wolves.
Yeah, I have plenty of Space Wolves.
Good stuff. So hopefully we can tempt these gents back for another game.
Absolutely.
I will thank you, though, once again for your amazing efforts. You've come down. I know it's not too far, but it's still a day out. I think we've been here for about 10 hours so far, so time is ticking on. But thank you so much for efforts and coming down.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure. I hopefully you enjoyed yourselves.
Yep.
One for your opponent. Yep. Whitewash, but he's a nice guy. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next game.